So Robert, first of all, I was reading about when you were growing up, and you were still a junior over at East High School, and you were interested in computer science, and you really wanted this internship with Bell Labs.
Right.
And hold on one second. And you obviously wouldn't take no for an answer, and you were persistent with your pursuit of their internship. So just talk about, where did that come from? The stubbornness, the
Sure.
persistence. Is that how you always were growing up?
I guess, I have the great fortune having grown up in Denver, in the east side of Denver. I lived on 26th and Cook. And it was a wonderful community that I grew up in. And at the time, a number of professionals. We actually had the Lieutenant Governor George Brown lived next door, and Jerry Rose was one of our congressmen, lived across the street. But we had dentists and contractors, and someone who's a Pullman porter, all in the neighborhood. And my parents were both educators. My father was originally a principal at Barrett, and then my mother at Knight Fundamental Academy, etc. So when you had parents who were teachers, you learn to be relentless in your pursuit of excellence in whatever craft it is that you're interested in. And while I was in high school at East, same high school my father went to, determined and had a chance to really take a computer course. And while taking that computer course, my teacher at the time told me about the transistor was developed at this place called Bell Labs. Found out there was a Bell Labs in Denver. At that time, it was all a big part of Ma Bell. And I called them and said, "Hey, do you have internships?" They said, "Oh yeah, if you're between your junior and senior year in college." And I said, "Well, I'm a junior in high school taking AP classes, just like being in class in college." And they said, "No, it isn't." So I literally called the human resources person every day for 2 weeks. We had a little payphone in the hall. I put 10 cents in, which would have cost at the time. She stopped taking the calls after the second day, and then I called every Monday for 5 months. And ultimately, a student from MIT didn't show up. They called me back in June. They said, "No, look, we don't know you. We never met you. Why don't you come down and interview?" And I put $2 worth of gas, which is all I had in my car, and I drove down with the one suit that I owned and got a job and worked there for basically the next few years as I matriculated through collge.
Okay, so I get the
Sure.
2 weeks thing, but 3.5 months into it, you're still doing this. So what was it about it? You're like, I'm not going to give up, or what?
Well, look, like all things, when you grow up, and most of your surroundings, they're people, they're teachers, but engineers. There was one person in our collective group who was a wonderful young man, and he died a few years ago. He's an engineer at Lockheed Martin, and just to hear what engineers did for a living, I really wanted to understand and be a part of that. It's a fascinating career, and the only way to get into it is actually find internships. And so to me, it was how do I figure out a way to really understand this and actually get in a place where you have really smart people who can actually teach you this craft and this trade of engineering.
Okay, so moving on, and you obviously go to college and you get a job and you're successful at Goldman Sachs, and then you decide in 2000 to leave and start your own venture. Is it would you say that same feeling of persistence and maybe stubbornness that caused you to take such a bold step at that time?
Yeah, from time to time in your life, you'll be exposed to something that can change the entire trajectory of either professional or personal life and or career. And while I was at Goldman and I led a group, and we did, it was storage and enterprise systems, encountered the fact that if you think about software, it's the most productive tool been introduced in our business economy over the last 50 years, but most software companies actually weren't run that efficiently. And so I started seeing what I call best practices in specific countries or companies that if you apply them to other software companies, it would make them operate more effectively. And so in putting that set of fact patterns together which was an investor at the time, which was a charitable trust, they said, we should, if you're interested, we should move forward on this idea. And like all things, you have to decide if you take a risk or not. And I looked at it and I said, well, how am I going to feel 15, 20 years from now if I don't take this risk and go try this and see if it works. I saw the pattern where it could work. It's just a matter of how do you build a business and a team and an infrastructure to make it work. And I had the good fortune of having some people around me at the time who also were naive enough to take that risk in that adventure, and we plowed forward against it back in 2000.
I mean, I know you obviously are hoping for the best, but were you prepared to fall flat on your face?
are you ever prepared to know? I mean, there is that fear, that constant fear of, stepping backwards, you go off the cliff. When I left Goldman, it was really that. It really didn't have a backup plan. And, look, I started the firm in early 2000, the dot-com bust in mid-2000, September 11th, 2001. And just as we're starting to gain a little traction and momentum, we had the great financial crisis in 2008. So there are many times where, if you actually looked at the numbers, you would have a fair amount of fear and trepidation about what the future looks like. But, you have to plow forward and do the best you can. And, what I say, hone your skills and your experiences and really, work with the portfolio companies and the managers to improve those businesses. And fortunately, that first fund, we actually wound up in 2014, 14 years later, to a success. And then we've been able to launch our business from that.
Is it that type of spirit that you hope to impart on these graduates here today?
This is a very interesting group of graduates because it's professional school graduates. So they've kind of staked their claim already in terms of their area of interest. And what I hope to impart on them, hopefully I'm successful, is to pick a purpose and to be dogged in the pursuit of that purpose. There's a tenacity element, but make sure that purpose is also noble. Make sure it is serving of a community that is worthwhile to you, and make sure you dedicate yourself to it. Ensuring that you're just not flitting across the waves of saying everything, but figuring out how you can make an impact. Our world is becoming more complex. Technology is now becoming a part of everything, and frankly, focus is what's going to determine what I think the direction of our society. People who are learned, who are focused, and are able to actually take that focus and make real substantial change. So I'm hopeful that they embrace that message of focusing.
Now, a different aspect of your life is music and the arts. Talk about the significance of your position with Carnegie Hall and why music is so important to you.
Sure. So here we are at Denver University, and my father actually got his undergraduate degree here and his master's and his doctorate. And he actually came here on a music scholarship. So I grew up with music in my house. He and his twin sister used to play music on Sundays, and you see the whole community kind of come and listen to the music. And I said, everybody has music in their soul to a great extent, and sometimes you can actually have it liberated in the form of a musician, or in some cases people who appreciate it. And I have the great privilege to serve as the chairman of Carnegie Hall, and a big part of my thrust is to drive music education back into the classrooms and into the schools where children can cultivate that spark. We have a program there called Link Up. Last year we got to over 600,000 school children, and we should get to over the course of the next 10 years well over 5 million school children. And bringing music back into their hearts, into their souls, and to some degree back into the classrooms, I think is an important part of what my legacy will be at Carnegie Hall.
Do you feel that in some way music is a part of your success?
There's no question about it. If you look, the thing that you have to do in music, it takes a tremendous amount of dedication. And I say the word sacrifice, but it's actually a joy. But you have to practice, and you have to hone your skill and become an expert. And those are the same sort of skills and talents that are required to be in the world of software, in the world of technology, or the world of investing, to become an expert. And so there's a lot of what comes from the music education process that translates itself to the most successful executives. I had an offsite a couple of weeks ago with my top 300 or so executives, and I asked them this question about once a year just to get a sense, and how many of them either play music or played music. And usually it's between 2/3 and 3/4 of the hands raised. And these are some of the top software executives in the world. Developers, CEOs, CTOs, CFOs, etc. So there is a connection. I think it has to do with some cognitive development. I think it also has to do with people who understand and appreciate harmony. And in that context, if you have a harmonious business, I think things will perform well.
Obviously, you have enjoyed financial success, but in recent years especially, you have made significant donations, $50 million to Cornell, $20 million to the Smithsonian. Why do you believe in that? Is that important to you?
It is. I grew up in a community where it was important to always give back to the community opportunity. And if you think of the gifts that I give personally, the gifts that we give through the Fund 2 Foundation, which was an outgrowth of our first fund, those gifts, frankly, are to empower. Those gifts are to enable future generations, younger generations, to build their skills, find opportunity, and actually put themselves in a position to better their communities. If you look at a lot of the gifts that I'm focused on driving, directing, and giving, a lot of them are really towards creating opportunities for African Americans and women in STEM education. Those are the areas I think we need as a country to embrace more aggressively in terms of our skill sets and our development, and of course what I call the fundamentals of music and music education. My wife is focused on a lot of events or activities associated with caring of children and foster care and women who have been put into in positions of sexual slavery, etc. So all of those we look for those areas, and we think we can make a specific difference to the future of somebody's life and the future of the opportunity, and hopefully they'll take that and inculcate that back into the communities in which they live. It's the kind of community I grew up in, and hopefully I have some impact in the communities that I operate in.
When over recent years you've done more interviews and been more public, but prior to that, maybe prior to 2015, you had a pretty quiet profile. Well, why? I
was working hard.
Yeah, well, why was that? Why was that at that time?
Well, I mean, like all things, you have to do your work. I tell people at the end of the day, I'm really just a quiet engineer, just trying to create these elegant solutions to the complex problems that we face. And from time to time, I see that I can bring different sets of resources. Sometimes it's intellectual property. Sometimes it's the certain individuals who have relationships with. Sometimes it's capital. Sometimes it's the aggregation of capital to solve these problems. And through that process, I think that's where the profile to a great extent has been raised. It's all been just a natural maturation process of working hard to do the right things and do well and do good things in the communities, and over time more resources flow that I can actually drive forward, and every now and then the press picks up on it and wants to talk about it.
But I mean, do you feel that it's important, especially now with your success, that you are out there as a visible role model for especially young black men?
I have learned that is an important station that I must occupy. I've had some friends who are very public African Americans, and they said, Robert, not enough people know about you. And I kind of look at them and say, well, why do they need to know about me? But I realized, there were role models who I grew up with, Frederick Douglass, for one, my father for another, that had I not had exposure to them, I wouldn't have those innate elements that drive me forward. So it's important for these young African American men to understand there are people like Robert Smith out there who actually can, be learned in the sciences and in engineering and in finance, and create a business platform and a philanthropic platform that can impact not tens or not hundreds, but hundreds of thousands and millions of people just like them. So I think that's part of the pay it forward element that I have to drive forward.
Okay, so one final question for you. I'm not sure how often...
Golden State. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's an easy one.
Yeah, you say that now. Yeah.
I don't know how often you come back to Denver, but when you do, is there some kind of, do you enjoy coming back to Denver? Is there something special about coming back to Denver?
Denver will always be my home. Colorado will always be my home. I own a ranch called Lincoln Hills. Lincoln Hills is the oldest African American resort community founded by African Americans. And we run a number of programs there in the summer. I'm very excited about them. Last year we had over 5,400 black and brown kids, school kids, come and visit in the summer. We get about 5,000 school kids every summer. We get about 200 to 300 wounded veterans through our Anglers of Honor program. We have now a program called TeenWorks that we work with one of the local groups that takes a 15 or 20 inner city kids and 15 or 20 mountain youth, and they work together all summer. We started that program 7 years ago, and we have an equestrian program for African American girls. All those things are an important part of what I call building the fabric of what makes Colorado great and what makes Denver really the best place to live. It is, truly still my home. We live in Austin, Texas, but I still, when people ask me where you're from, I say I'm from Denver.
Excellent. Well, Robert, I don't have any other...
Generational Denver.
Oh yeah.
I don't have any other questions. Is
Awesome.
there anything else you'd like to add? Did I miss anything? Or?
No, I think we hopefully got it all. Edited great. I'd love for you to put the Lincoln Hills stuff in there if you can. I think that's an important part of our outreach program here.
It's Colorado.
Yeah, it's a wonderful program. It's a wonderful program. We had 5,400 kids last year. I think we had 5,100 the year, but we average about 5,000.
So are they doing that right now? Like
Oh yeah,
these-
soon as school's out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I should head out.
Come
there.
up and
Good
visit.
story.
Yeah, come up. We'll be there in July.
Give me
I mean, the
info.
program's going on all the time, but if you want to
that's
come
very
up when we're there, we get there in July. You know, don't tell people that, but you know,
Right.
we're there in July, and you know, happy to have you come up and show you around a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's
I'll talk with Alan.
yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Thank you.
Great.